I am doing on my Caroline Best Facebook page. Well, we're having some technical difficulties with our live streaming to our Tao of Horsemanship Facebook page today for our podcast. So we are trying everything we can, and we are out of our Zoom schedule, out of our streaming, and cannot connect to the camera on the Tao of Facebook, but we can connect to the camera on Caroline Best. So that's why I am here. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see my lovely co-host, Sabrina, who answers all of the Q&A. She will be answering Q&A. You just won't be able to see her lovely self because we're live on Facebook instead of live streaming through Zoom, where we can share a screen. All right. So for those of you that are wondering why I'm here, welcome to Everything Horses and More live podcast. So yes, you can pick this up on your app, on your cell phone, and listen to the podcast. So we are going to be there. We're recording. And today, let me see if I can find us on Caroline Best. I don't see me.
Yeah, I'm having a heck of a time.
Yep, you're having a hard time too. So before we go any further, let me just see if I can find us. If we don't show up, then even though the camera's on and it says we're live, let's make sure here. Yep.
So.
Yeah, I don't even see us right now, which is crazy. Yeah, it's hard when you're very rural and out in the country. And of course, this is hurricane season down here. Oh my God, on the Gulf of Florida. So who's to say? What's going on here? Okay. Alrighty. So do you see us yet? Sorry guys, I see that there's 4 of us on my Facebook page. So just hang in there. I can't see myself, and that's how I know, and Sabrina's having a hard time logging on. So just give us a second here to get straight. No, technology. Alrighty. Are you on yet?
I am on. I'm going to your personal page now.
Okay.
Because I just got done telling the Tao page.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I think, yes. Yeah, there you are.
Okay. I don't see myself.
Yep.
All right, awesome. But that's so weird how I'm really clear. It's better than Zoom. Okay, so we won't worry about that right now. We'll just come back and keep moving forward. All right, so welcome this week, and we started yesterday with Everything Horses and More podcast. For those of you that are not familiar with this, we stream live every week to my Tao of Horsemanship Facebook page, and then we archive everything on my YouTube channel because we're streaming live, so you get to see Sabrina and me, and it's a lot more engaging this way. So we feel like we're together. But we also are recording these podcasts, and so you can find them on Sabrina. But we upload our podcast to Buzzsprout.
Yes, Buzzsprout, and then we, of course, on YouTube.
We're on YouTube. We're on iTunes. So you can just download the app for podcasts and type in Everything Horses and More, and there you go.
And then also I put so you can download it right onto your computer.
Awesome.
MP3, so they don't even have to find it anymore.
Yeah, you can just download this right onto your computer. So. Awesome. And listen to it later. So Everything Horses and More podcasts, we're here to educate, liberate, and inspire horse owners around the world. Join our live radio show and our revolution in horse care, handling, training, and achieve the life and relationship and ride of your dreams. That's what we're all about. Every week we bring you education, expert advice, and inspiration about horses, training, and living authentically. We spend time diving in deep, talking about complex areas in horsemanship, areas that nobody else is talking about out there. And I can't say it enough why this is such a revolution, and I'm a pioneer. We are pioneers right now, Sabrina and me, because Yeah, she's like, there's so much propaganda and bullshit out there that's Hi, Lydia. Thank you. That's mainstream. And I'm here to bust it because there's more to horses, there's more to training, handling, riding, relationship than they're telling you out there. So we dive in deep every week talking about complex areas in horsemanship, such as horse psychology, the real psychology, biological behavior and nature, the science behind things, and the real secrets to being safe with horses. And that's not all. We get real and honest about our personal lives and experiences, sharing what's worked and what hasn't about everything related to horses and more. So it's a real full circle here. And that's why the word authentic comes up every time. I mean, we're authentic. We talk about stuff, we share our stuff, and everything, especially in what I teach and in my method. I mean, horses are such a metaphor and a symbol for ourselves, for life in general, and a great reflection, a great ability to mirror ourselves, evolve, grow spiritually, transcend consciously. I mean, it goes on and on and on. So yep, we're streaming live usually through Zoom to the Tao of Horsemanship every week, Monday through Wednesdays for at least the month of September. This week specifically, we are talking about training, horse training in general. And so yesterday we talked about, let's talk about horse training, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I talked a lot about my mastery membership program, and also in that it wasn't just about the program so much as it was what the program represented and why it is a program and why I designed it as such, versus I didn't just design it as a 20-day training course or a 12-week training course that just gives you tips and strategies. It's really a training system. And in that training system, it's classical. It goes back to the great masters. And we're going to talk about my favorite great master. One of them, I have two today, Nuno Oliveira. And Nuno Oliveira, yes, he was a classical dressage trainer and instructor, but more than anything, he represented classical horsemanship and the art of horsemanship and the foundation of horsemanship, the principles of horsemanship. And that is what my method is all about. And I so highly revere him. I've only been able to study his books and study what little there is out there of him. I was never an apprentice of his. And I am going to read from one of his longest apprentices today that knew him very well. But yeah, I mean, he just represented, just like I think Tom and Bill Dorrance did. They were like the gurus of, there's another word for it too, not just gurus. I can't think of it right now, but they were the masters of just Western horsemanship here in the United States, where Nuno, is European and comes from the classical horsemanship. And so it's just really, I want to bring those worlds together and talk about the old principles and theory. And the reason being is because the great masters that I revere, they cared about horses. They understood, they didn't compromise the horse. They understood how important it was to look at the horse holistically. And holistically is not a woo-woo word. It's not here to be like, oh, there's a spiritual aspect definitely to holism. And it is part of being holistic because you're dealing with all aspects of a being's well-being. I'm a being, horses are beings, they're sentient beings, dogs are beings. Any socially and emotionally intelligent species has a capacity to evolve and grow, and we need to look at all aspects of their wholeness, their well-being. And that means the spiritual, that means the emotional, the physical, and the mental. And that's why, for me, I revere him so much. And the same with the Dorrances with horsemanship. It's just amazing. So yesterday we were just talking about horse training, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you guys can find links to that podcast, maybe not on YouTube yet, but if you go to the Tao of Horsemanship, or maybe they've been shared already on my personal page here. And today we're going to be talking about horse training from the great master, his perspective, Nuno Oliveira. And I'll talk more about who he is, where he came from. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about more in depth. We're going to be talking about dangerous horses. That's going to be one of the specialized topics tomorrow. And what do we do with problem horses? And I think we all kind of get, anybody that's a follower of mine, a subscriber of mine, a student of mine, you all agree with me, I think, the mass majority of you, that there are no problem horses. We create the problems. So I'm not going to spend any time, talking about that specifically, but I am going to be talking about what do we do with so many of these negative learned behaviors or problems that our horses have. And when I do my monthly webinars on the Mastery membership, and it goes out into Facebook, the universe of Facebook, meaning it becomes a promotional campaign, and it's reaching thousands of people, and then I get all these people that come to the webinar. I get flooded with questions, which I love. We're here to take questions, so don't be shy. And it amazes me every month how I receive similar questions from people all over the world. The same questions. You all are learning from the same horrible types of training all over the world. And in some parts of the world, it's worse than others, depending on your level of education and affluence. But it just drives me crazy, and it's really sad. And that's one of the things I'm going to be talking about tomorrow, is what do we do with all of these problems? And unfortunately, what I see as a professional out there and doing the same thing that a lot of my other professional equine trainers and instructors are doing, we're starting to sell our work online, and we're starting to promote it through social media. And I'm here to warn you guys that there's a lot of tricks to the trade. There's a lot of equine professionals, some of the top, the most popular, just regurgitating, stealing language, using words to bait you, seduce you in, and regurgitating it, but they don't have, it's kind of like, it's very superficial. They're good at talking the talk, but they're not good at doing it, actually showing you how to do it. I think my YouTube videos speak for themselves. You actually get to see me with not just one of my horses, but many of my horses. And you certainly see me with horses that I used to work with. I no longer do work with any horses. I don't do horses in training anymore except my own. But you get to see me. You get to see how real it is, that you can develop everything you see with my horses. You can do this. I want you to have the same experience. So we're going to dive in deeper, because what we're going to talk about today across the board, unless you get into traditional dressage or European classical dressage or the academic art of riding, when you get into these older methods, and they're all European based, when you get into these older methods, unless you do, and it really isn't public, or what's the word I want to say, mainstream here in the States yet. It really isn't. It still isn't. We've got competitive dressage, but we don't understand classical. We've taken competitive, or we've taken classical dressage, the European, the great masters, and we've bastardized it into competitive dressage. And we spend half the time preparing our horses and preparing the foundation. We spend half the time that the horse deserves and needs, and we rush them and we force them. And we see that in many different disciplines. It's not just dressage, but I'm going to pick on that one because that's my favorite. My favorite, absolutely. So again, Sabrina is here to take, you guys have seen her already, say hi. Yep, we've already got a couple of our students on the podcast. Welcome. Thank you, girls. So before I read an interview from one of Nuno Oliveira's longest apprentices, one of them, and that will help you get a really great idea about who this guy is and why I think he's so important. I'm going to read first some of my favorite quotes of his that I've been collecting throughout the years. And when I got back into horses as a second career, for those of you that don't know it, and it's important to understand this because this is, to me, part of classical training, classical horsemanship, is I took 2 years off Yes, I worked to prepare this life. Nobody gave me money. I've made all my own money, you guys. And I had a business, another career, another business of my own before this business. And it was in graphic and web design and marketing in DC. It was very successful. I got divorced, gave it to my ex-husband, and then I went off into this direction. But I saved money for years and took my time to develop a plan of action to get the hell out of my other career. And how could I make a living with horses? They're so expensive. And not just make a living with them. I didn't want to do it traditionally. I was turned off by competition and showing as a young girl, a young child, turned off way back then. And I'd experienced so many amazing things with my late horse. I mean, I was doing Liberty when I was 10 years old with him. I was riding bridleless. I was jogging with him through 500 acres of hay fields. I was learning how to ride. I mean, I did everything with this horse, everything that I'm teaching today. I wasn't following anybody's method. There was no method. I'm in my 50s. There was no method back then. And so I took the course of going to college and then going off into a whole nother direction. And so, but I always wanted to do something with horses. And most importantly, I wanted to take what I had learned and be able to share that. It was so magical. And it was akin to the Black Stallion and Alec Ramsey and his experiences and what I read. And I know it was fantastical and I was idealistic and I was young and I was creative. And there's nothing wrong with that because I followed my dreams. And I never stopped feeling or losing what I had discovered then. I never stopped that. I just parked it, I banked it, and kept it somewhere really sacred. But when I had enough money, my own money, to finally invest in studying and getting back into horses, and this was a very well thought out plan of mine, I did it. And I took 2 years off, bought myself a horse farm, had my first 3 horses, my Trinity and my donkey, and I studied. And I not only traveled and studied one-on-one with some of our leading trainers today that I would not recommend, and in every discipline, I studied the books. I love to read. And back in the early 2000s, the internet was still new. Internet was very new. I mean, Facebook was brand new. Facebook, Facebook used to be MySpace.
Or it wasn't used to be MySpace. It was a different software.
Yeah, something totally
MySpace.
different than MySpace and Facebook. So, I mean, you can find a lot on the internet, and there certainly wasn't anything about spirituality. I mean, the first thing I found out was Bill and Tom Dorrance, but that's because I signed up to the subscription of Eclectic Horseman. And my dad and I were really into Horse Illustrated. I grew up with Horse Illustrated as a young girl, Western Horsemen.
Yep.
So I knew about some of the more basic horsemen that are still around today. I never heard of Pirelli until I was getting back into horses. And I was very skeptical about natural horsemanship, but skeptical in a good way. But at the same time, it was the most akin to this new way, revolutionary way of thinking and working with horses. And so that was my first path when I got back into horses, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And the biggest point I'm driving home in this podcast is taking your time to study. And I was learning already by taking my time to study how to become a better learner, because it was going to be really important to me as a teacher, because I had so many hardships learning and retaining information and testing. I had a horrible time all through school and in college. And so I wanted to figure out, there's got to be a better way to learn. How can I help students? And this is definitely going to help me with horses, because each horse is an individual. Even though we're all going to go to school and learn the same things, that's your classical foundation. Learn the same things to give us a very well-rounded education, well-balanced, and we're having trouble playing this video. So if you still see me, and
I still see you now, yeah.
Yeah, but there'll be a lag time.
Yeah, but they've been saying you've been stopping and going.
Yes, thanks to the weather and being rural.
Yeah.
So it'll get better after September. That's our worst time in Florida. So long story short, I'm bringing all of this up because we've definitely lost this drive, enthusiasm, excitement for learning. And everybody, and because of technology, because of the ease and accessibility of getting information instantaneously, and especially with our younger generations coming up in every occupation, not just in horsemanship. I mean, everything is just so quick. And I don't want you to call me old school. I mean, I am old school in my reasoning and in my thoughts, and as far as taking your time to study and learn. But that is the way it should be, and especially with horses. They are such complex beings, not just mental, not so much mental, but emotionally and physically. There's so much to learn, especially about the biomechanics of movement. And then the complexity of the emotions and psychology. It's much deeper than most people understand, even as professionals. So we need to take the time to educate ourselves and study and train our eye before we start the kinesthetics, the tactile, the one-on-one visceral experiences, meaning working with our horses. We need to train our eye. And that I'm going to drive home hard this week. And we need to also be set up to learn about the horse, and not just the mechanics of the body movement, and definitely not the mechanics of the exercises, meaning I don't want it to become mechanical. And unfortunately, so much of our training has become mechanically because everybody's trying to please you with your quick fixes, that they rush the horse and they make things appear really easy. And horse training is not easy, guys.
Do you agree also, though, that sometimes the trainers, so people are impatient.
Yes, people are impatient.
There and they're like, okay, what are you doing? I want you to fix my horse. What are you doing? They're not like...
They get impatient with me on YouTube with their comments.
Yeah,
You talk too much, Caroline.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
Perfect.
so out of a 30-minute video, maybe 10 minutes is about principles and concepts. Yes, people are impatient.
Yeah, like they just want it now. Fix it now.
I don't think so much in my generation because of the way we were brought up.
Okay.
But that's going to be, as a parent, both of us being parents to our children, and our sons are the same age.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the millennials? You know, there's this, I mean, I can't even talk about them because I'm so disgusted with what's going on today in our country.
Yeah.
And so much of it is the youth.
Yeah.
I mean, there's what's grounding them. Where's the level of appreciation? There's instant gratification all the time instead of taking the time to earn something, earn the relationship, earn it.
Absolutely.
It builds character.
So,
it makes you appreciate what you have.
Yeah, we don't have that.
Well, we don't have that in horse training.
No.
I mean, that's what my method is all about, is taking the time to develop your horse. I'm teaching you how to train. I like to say, develop your own horse. Nope, I just want to get this fixed. My horse can't pick up the correct lead. It's horrifying. I mean, your horse picking up the correct lead should never be fixed with you riding them. Maybe a quick, honestly, but it needs a professional eye like mine to assess. Most of the time, it's a bigger issue that needs to be dealt with on the ground and by developing the horse. It has nothing to do, and then we'll look at the rider. Maybe the rider's getting in the way.
I see that.
But that's a common question. My horse won't pick up the correct lead or won't hold the lead, and then counter canters. And it's like, well, you need a professional eye to look at both of you to see what's going on. Is it the rider? Is it the horse? Is it a combination? But so often this needs to be solved on the ground. And so here we go back to groundwork. And then there's too many people teaching you groundwork, and there's not enough riding. Everybody's still scared to ride, or we still don't have a safe horse to ride. So are you all able to see me? Because I can't see myself anymore.
I'm still seeing you. Might have a delay, but
Yeah.
I'm still seeing you.
Yeah, don't.
But I think we went through this before, where you can't see yourself, but yet everybody else can.
Oh, thank God.
That's why we went to Zoom.
All right. Oh my gosh. Yes, that's why we went to Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start with Nuno. And, let Sabrina know in the comments area how many of you guys are familiar with Nuno Oliveira. So here's some great quotes of his on riding. And every quote that I have, I could spend a whole podcast on, you guys, and I have a lot of quotes to talk about because every one of these, from my students, every one of these quotes is in your Mastery Membership program. I mean, I've been studying this guy, and I would read his writings and I would take notes. And that one, like these quotes, that one aha would stick out for me. And then I would want to learn all about that. And then I would go off in that 2-year sabbatical I took and saved all that money. I would go off and start trying to find a classical dressage trainer in my area that knew something that taught similarly. I was
Really cool.
horribly disappointed.
That does not surprise me.
Until I came to Florida. And then when I became a working equitation instructor, my Portuguese instructor, who was not a Nuno follower, but very similar, and because I'm very Baroque in my dressage, and I was taught that way. And then, of course, another working equitation instructor who's phenomenal and who certified me in Florida, Jean. So yeah, just amazing. So here's the first quote. The secret in riding is to do only a few things, but to do them right. This one stood out for me because when I was coming back to horses, and I'm always a student, but I was a full-time student back then, right? And I was learning from lots of different people in different disciplines, reining, specifically natural horsemanship and classical dressage. So what I couldn't stand in my dressage lessons was the barking, not the yelling, but the barking. But let's go, let's go, let's go, do this, do this, do this. And it's like they're telling you to do so many things or to be aware of so many things in your body. What is the horse doing? You know, so you're focused on you, you're focused on the horse, and then you're trying to focus on the combination of the two of you and how you're influencing each other. So there's like these 3 worlds you have to focus on when you are an ardent student and taking a lesson. And I couldn't understand why they threw so many things at you. I don't do that. I'll get you to focus on one specific thing in a lesson. And if there's other things affecting that, which there usually are, either with you or the horse, we'll address them. But I'm never going to bark at you. Never. So the secret in riding is to do only a few things, but to do them right. So that means take your time and be patient. Take your time. And when you're developing your riding foundation or your horse's riding foundation, which is what my Mastery Membership is all about, there have to be building blocks, you guys. You just don't start doing this and then you do this. It's all going to fall apart. You have to have a curriculum, a step-by-step process. You have to. You're going to school, both you and your horse. The next one, the more you do, the less success you will have. How many of us have felt that way in a lesson, whatever discipline? So the more you do, the less success you will have. The less you do, the more will go right. Mastery Membership students, this is great for you guys. You become overachievers. There's a lot of us out there that are overachievers, or you might get easily overwhelmed. This is for you. The less you do, the more will go right. I mean, a lot of these quotes, you guys, you're going to hear it in the Mastery Membership, in my words, but now you're going to understand. The next one, I don't want to have riders who tire themselves out. Work by thinking instead. Thinking, and I'm going to add feeling of your horse and for your horse. So often we are pushing and forcing and making and fighting with our horses, whether it's on the ground or under saddle. So Nuno says, I don't want to have riders who tire themselves out. Work by thinking instead. It is good to ride with closed eyes once in a while. Absolutely. I think I say that in the Mastery Membership. If you trust your horse or if you need to be led, just to get the feel, because so often when we open our eyes, we fixate on something and become very linear. And that's just hardwired in us because of our the way our eyes are positioned, and we're predatorial. So it's good to ride with your eyes closed. It's one of the best ways I've taught my students to actually feel the canter and be able to ride the canter. But that's on one of my school horses, and it's just a few strides of canter. That's another thing that drives me nuts is too many, and I keep calling them backyard instructors because they don't know what they're doing. You want to learn to ride, so they stick you on a horse, and before you know it, you're trotting the first or second day. Trotting and cantering is an art. It takes time to develop the ability to ride those movements. And before you, as a rider, learn to ride those movements, you have to make sure the horse is collected. Because if the horse is not collected either at the trot, which means they're balanced and straight, if you don't have that at the trot or canter, it's impossible to ride. It's impossible for me to ride. It's like a pogo stick. You're like jarred the whole time. It's impossible. You lose your balance. You're bouncing all over the horse. You're negatively influencing and affecting their balance. So that's a whole nother conversation. So here's Nuno on the hands. That was Nuno on riding. Here's Nuno on the hands. The hands have to be like cement when the horse resists, and like butter when the horse yields. So the hands, so I'm going to talk about what this means because I don't want anybody misinterpreting this. We always want soft and light hands when we ride, because that's what creates and maintains a responsive horse. If we're always fighting or closing or having resistance, we're going to create that in our horse. What Nuno means by this is when the horse resists, I call it shutting the door. You just close and hold. Let the horse resist against themselves. It's like creating a box. And I talk about this in my mastery membership. It's not about you pulling and fighting with the horse. It's about you just holding and letting the horse figure it out. And as soon as the horse relaxes, you release. So you're teaching the horse how to create their own release. You're teaching the horse how to create their own release, which helps them self-carry. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Pretty powerful, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Now you know I've been studying this stuff. I've been thinking about this for a long time.
I love listening to it.
When riding a well-trained horse, the fingers should only very rarely close. When I teach you that your fingers are like playing, when they're attached to the reins, it's like playing an instrument. And you are communicating, right? Getting feedback through the reins, that instrument, you're communicating. Yes. The small and ring fingers can yield, but never the thumb. In the art of riding, any excuse to yield is justified. There is a world of difference between holding and pulling. So when we go back to the hands have to be like cement when the horse becomes resistant, we're just holding. We're shutting it down, we're shutting the door down, the door going forward, which means most of the time you guys have to shorten your reins. Most of the time you're riding with reins too long, and then you pull. And the minute you pull on that horse, the horse is going to push, because that's instinctive. Horses are oppositional by nature. So, yes, I love that. There's a world of difference between holding and pulling. Each use of the hand has to be preceded by an action of the upper body. Otherwise, the rider is merely influencing the horse's head. Yes! Nobody's teaching you guys this. Nobody. You're all getting the horse's face, get them all in a frame, push them into the contact. And one of the number one things I do not agree with in any dressage that I've ever studied, it doesn't matter who it is is this whole notion that you've got to push your horse into contact. So when I develop horses to ride, I develop their movement first. I develop the movement that I want to ride first before I ride it. And it's developed in a way that they can collect that movement. They're balanced and straight. And when a horse is balanced and straight, that equals collection. When a horse is collected, they can carry themselves. It's called self-carriage. They can carry themselves. There's no reason why you have to be in their face. You don't have to hold them. Now, my horses have to be responsive and light to contact. They need to respect that contact. Damn straight. Look at my YouTube videos. Look at my backup. Look at my stop and my backup. The stop is through the seat. If the horse doesn't hear it, I close my hands. I shut the door, and that horse feels that door shut and backs up. And you don't see me pull. Sometimes you just see me do this and hold the reins. You must teach that to your horse, though. So each use of the hand has to be preceded by an action of the upper body. Otherwise, the rider is merely influencing the horse's head. Don't play with the reins when they are tight, but yield first and then play with the reins. Good point. Well, this is all according to a bit being in the horse's mouth. I train bitless. I train organically and naturally on the ground first, and then we bring all of that collection and elasticity in the movement and self-carriage under saddle. So much easier. And then when you do have contact, it's just to rebalance the horse. So you don't want to play with the reins when they're tight, because obviously you're playing with the horse's mouth and you're giving them mixed messages. The hand should be like a filter, not like a lid or an open tarp. I like that, an open tarp or a lid screwed on tight. It should be like a filter. So what does that mean? It's constantly, you're getting information. And what do? You have to be taught what to do with that information. It is a lot better to risk losing a bit of contact than a yield. A yield, a stop. Nuno on the legs. Leg action does not necessarily mean that the calf becomes active, as the leg of the rider starts at the hip. It is often enough to just use the hip. Damn straight. So a perfect example would be, and we'll film this later on this year, would be when I'm developing, let's say, Sundance and Lovey, my schoolmasters, and I'm developing them in a leg yield or a trot half pass or a canter half pass. I never use leg to develop my horses. I don't teach them to change leads through the leg either. It is through the hip. It is through the weight distribution. But before all of that even happens, when I ride, they're already taught this level of maneuverability on the ground first. And when you follow the classical teachings, it takes, like the Spanish School of Riding, it can take 8 years to develop the upper level movements. And that means that the horse is developed on the ground first to perform all of those movements before the rider is introduced to the movement. And then the rider has to learn the movement. And the bits, the whole history of the bit, it was just to rebalance the horse. It was never to teach the horse. Then it became a way of controlling the horse. And now we have thousands and thousands of bits or reiterations of the same bit. So when you understand the bit's purpose, it was just to rebalance the horse. So the old school never taught with the bit, and they never introduced riding until way after the horse was fully developed. My horses are all developed to do change of leads, simple leads to flying changes on the ground. So that when I go to ride that movement, it is simply in the movement and a switch, a natural switch of the weight. And the horse is you're totally gonna influence them, especially when you understand footfall and you're in the air. It is the easiest way. yes, it does get a bit complicated. And that's why I have really happy horses that love to work with me. And that's what I want to teach all of you, that don't mind it at all. And obviously have emotional, mental, and physical soundness. I've never had to wrap my horses. I've never had a lame horse. Banging the horse's sides with the ankles, especially in the sitting trot, will certainly disturb the horse's gait. I understand this completely. I never understood why so many dressage instructors, you've got to keep kicking them with your ankles and squeezing them to get their backs to round. No. If you teach a horse how to move correctly as a professional athlete, which takes time and stamina and strength and straightness and balance, they will carry themselves like a dancer the rest of their lives. We see it with my horses all the time. We may be out of shape, but we know how to carry ourselves. We just need to get back into shape. And so, when the horse engages the hind end like they're supposed to, then everything else will open up, including the top line and the shoulders, like me, like I'm doing in front of you. Everything will open up, which means the whole back will open up. And the beauty of riding bareback, and I've certainly felt this in my dressage saddles, and my Western, but the beauty of riding bareback is, wow, you can just feel that. It gives you such a deeper level of sensitivity to your horse's movement, and it keeps you really humble. You can't make stupid mistakes. You can't be greedy. You can't be selfish. You can't take advantage. And you shouldn't be riding if you don't have confidence or if you don't trust your horse. And my whole mastery membership program is designed to develop that confidence in you and to develop the horse in every way I'm talking about right now. Believe it or not, it's my life's work. So banging on the horse's sides, yeah, I never did get that because doing that totally interrupts your ability as a rider to maintain your balance and to be quiet aids. It's horrible. Yet we see it often. Yes, ma'am.
Doreen Beach Jones was wondering what type of bareback pad you use or recommend.
Oh, hi, Doreen. I think you sent me an email maybe. I apologize.
Yes, I got that.
Very busy. And you might have responded on YouTube. Go to my website, Tao of Horsemanship, and go to my shop page. And when you go to merchandise, you'll see the bareback pad that I recommend. And I've tried a million. And this is the bareback pad I've been using for the last 10 years. So it's the McPherson pad, but if you go through my website, I get a commission. So I appreciate it. And if you don't, you can go straight to their website. Fabulous pad for so many reasons. So many reasons. The legs have to softly drape so that they can gently activate, not through closing, but through touching. So that means when you apply pressure of your leg, you don't hike and get tense. We have a long, relaxed leg that just gently touches the horse. So yes, we do have to create a level of responsiveness in our horse to understand what we're activating. What does that mean? But when you are learning to be a balanced, quiet, effective rider, you have to have quiet aids and you need relaxation through the body or you'll lose your balance. You'll get tight. I mean, it makes common sense, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So much of the Mastery membership, it is steering all of my students to develop this all on the ground. The responsiveness in their horse, the trust level, the confidence to be able to apply different levels of pressure and their horse not freak out because they've had so many bad experiences with pressure, but also developing the student, the person's feel and timing through this process, and which develops softness in the human and lightness because we're trying to develop responsiveness in our horse instead of just pushing and making and punishing. If your legs are stiff, you risk that your horse becomes hard in the mouth. If your legs are stiff and tight and tense, you risk that your horse becomes hard in the mouth. Do you know how that happens? Do you? Do you know what that means? Or how that happens? If you don't, that's okay. I'll answer it for you.
Yeah, answer it for me, because
This stuff is deep.
it is
If
deep.
your legs are stiff, remember, anytime we have tension in our body, we as a rider create opposition to movement. So if we're sitting on our horse's back, their top line, and we get tight, our opposition in our body creates opposition, the inability for energy and movement to flow through the horse.
Okay.
So that's just one thing. It also creates imbalance in our horse, because now our horse is being made to go forward. We'll use that as an example. We're trotting, yet we've lost our balance and we tighten up, yet we're kicking or clucking or hitting the horse to go forward. But they're trying to capture our balance. And so
I do get it now.
It makes the horse hard in the mouth. It doesn't mean that that it's not about our contact in their mouth so much as the tension follows through their top line. And if a horse isn't balanced through the hind end and they don't catch their balance that way, they catch it here.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Yes,
they catch it here. They get tight. It doesn't mean we're pulling on them.
Okay.
It just means that the restriction of energy in our bodies, the horse is feeling, it goes through their body the same way. Their top line is their spine. It goes right through to their pole, and the tension is there.
Okay, it makes sense.
It's basically a reflection of where the tension in our body ends up.
Right. No, I understand it now.
When you have a really well-balanced horse, and the horse that's strong too, then they'll catch themselves back here in the hind end instead of here. Well, we do it in the hands, but when we're more balanced through our core and our balance point, then everything happens like in martial arts. Everything happens in our core and our stomach. But in the beginning, as a rider, it happens here in our hands. It happens braces in the leg. But the better you get, you go with that movement, and there'll be a nanosecond of like a tummy crunch where you just seize up for a nanosecond and let go, and it's really cool.
It is.
And a horse that's
I'm gonna go home and try it now.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like a half halt.
Yeah.
So half halts are a great way to really train both you and your horse to be extremely sensitive and responsive and aware of the shifting of weight, and it's just amazing.
Watching you,
Yeah, it's really, oh Lordy, my body is taking a beating with all of that, because I'm the rider that has used my core and my body, not my hands. So that's why I have all the pain that I have. Spurs are a lot less useful than one might think. A spur that is constantly touching the horse's sides does not drive the horse forward, but on the contrary, it will make the horse sluggish.
Makes them numb.
It does make them numb. It makes a lot of things. It's a horrible, horrible thing. When you touch the horse with stiff legs, the horse will become stiff. We talked about that. Just like the hands, the legs have to give and take. The errors of the legs are reflected in the horse's mouth. There we go again.
Wow.
I mean, how many of us have ever thought how our body position, lack of balance, tension affects the mouth? And yet our instructors are constantly screaming at us to be in the mouth.
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's another great advantage of the Mastery Membership Program. It's not just about teaching you how to develop your horse from start to finish and in all the gates and in collection. It's teaching you how to become a rider. So not just a trainer of your horse, but it's teaching you how to become one with your horse in so many ways, but also how to ride. Absolutely how to ride. So here's Nuno on the seat. Do not forget that hips and legs drive the horse forward, while the hands simply channel this force through gentle rein aids. So I am not a believer in using leg. Leg is another supporting aid, and it is rarely ever used. It's mostly used in the very beginning, while the horse is still developing their balance and strength and straightness with me as a rider. But once the horse gets to where they're powerful and they're through and they have that level of elasticity in the movement, then I'm always weaning them off a little bit of the leg, not a lot, and then it becomes they're really one with me. Where my body goes, they follow, or my body guides that movement. It just doesn't get any safer than that when a horse is so trusting and tuned into you to allow you to guide them like that. Their focus is totally on you, and that's one of the biggest points I keep driving home about getting the horse to a point where you're completely safe with them. You know, they're so focused on you, and then you have this whole relationship component. It just doesn't get any better than that. I mean, shit can be going on all around you, and you two are lost in your own little world. And it really is, it's real. And my students have witnessed it with their horses. Some of you guys that are in the Mastery membership, because it was newly released last year, I'm talking about older students that have been studying with me for a while. I mean, we've been in situations where birds have flown out, trees have fallen down, you know, horns are blaring, and you two are right in that focus together, and we don't even hear it. Nobody. Yeah. What'd you say? Bees. Yep. Bees. And yep. And your horse is trying to take care of you.
Yeah.
So the seat is number one for me. The rider contains the horse with the hip and upper body. Arms and legs are aids, supporting aids as I call them. So your main aid is your seat, your hips, and your upper body, because your upper body is heavy. And then your hands and your legs just gently guide. They're supporting aids. Move your hips towards your hands. We just posted that, what that looked like with me riding Sundance, bareback, completely bareback, and completely bitless, bridleless in an open field. We have that posted on my Facebook. So you guys get to see how I am moving my hips towards my hands, not holding, and moving, keep playing with her and moving her back towards. So your hands, move your hips towards your hands rather than moving your hands towards your hips. Use your hands and legs sparingly and keep the balance through your seat. The rider has to feel the back and follow the mouth, but focus more on the back than the mouth. He's big on the back, and so am I. So am I. I hope I can get to read some of this 7 pages of interview. So here's some miscellaneous quotes. For a horse to be in balance, it has to be relaxed, which is why it must not be compressed. So this is what I refer to as Pilates. This is why I've been doing Pilates with horses from this one quote. So a horse to be in balance, it has to be relaxed. So like Pilates, like yoga, when we stretch, we are lengthening. When we are lengthening, we are strengthening. None of this can happen unless we're relaxed. The opposite is tension, embrace. So when we allow our bodies to stretch, we have to relax. We have to breathe into it, and we have to relax. When we stretch, we are lengthening. And through the lengthening, we are strengthening. And when this happens through my lunging methods, whether it's the free lunge or lunging online, we are always looking for the horse to become round, the bascule of the top line, or a longitudinal stretch. And so that means the horse is not traveling like this. The horse is starting to release and relax its top line, which means that naturally, if you just do what I'm doing, it releases its shoulder area, its withers, and then its pole. And eventually the whole nose and head will get very low, almost touch the ground. You've seen it in some of my YouTube videos, and it's in the Mastery membership course. And then the horse is starting to really use its hind end this way. Okay, it's starting to develop real core balance, because if it doesn't, it rushes forward and they trip, they speed up. Thought it was the weather. So to cease the aids does not mean to leave the horse on its own, but to keep the contact while doing as little as possible. The rider has to rest on a horse, but not withdraw. Each time you are about to lose impulsion, your legs have to intervene. Perhaps there's other supporting aids. So each time you lose impulsion, you can push more. You can add some supporting aid like I offer in my courses. A little bit more energy, A little more. Wake the horse up. Yep, don't have to use the leg all the time, or you're going to get stuck using the leg all the time. Learn to cease the aids. When the horse is resisting the left rein, try to substitute the left rein aid with the left leg, meaning use your leg. I teach that in the Mastery membership too. It's part of your shoulder in. One should not learn how to ride by learning the rein aids, but by learning how to feel. Feel what you're riding. What does it feel like in your body? What does it feel like underneath of you? How does it show up in your body? So often we're not even body aware. We don't even know because we're taught to force the horse to go. Push them. Careful, danger. When talking to riders about impulsion, they tend to push. When you mention lightness to them, they tend to throw the reins away. The rider who leaves a horse on his own in the name of lightness is not working, but is just strolling with his horse. The one who pushes and pulls is a wild person. I love that. All right, those are some of my favorite quotes. I hope they've left an impression on you. Man, they sure did with me when I was reading. And do we have any questions? Okay. So this, I'm going to read through this quickly. This is going to be an interview from Eclectic Horseman, and the interviewee actually was Wendy Murdoch, and she was interviewing one of his longest apprentices, Bettina Drummond. Before we get to this interview, let me just give you a quick background on who Nuno is. Nuno Oliveira was born June 23rd, 1925, and died February 2nd, 1989. He was a Portuguese equestrian, horse trainer, and dressage instructor. And if you guys remember what I said earlier in this podcast, I was certified in working equitation here in Florida back in 2013 by both a Portuguese instructor who came over and my instructor here in Florida that I had at the time. She's since retired. His teachings have inspired riders and trainers all over the world to adopt the Baroque or classical style of working with the horse, an art which goes back hundreds of years and encompasses the fundamentals which most modern disciplines can be traced back to. So much of this, the Baroque in Portuguese, and I love working cattle, so much of it has to do with working cattle and the horse's ability to maneuver. It's beautiful. It is a dance, truly a dance. That's what I love about working equitation. When a great horseman passes away, his insight and his personal style are forever lost to us. But if he leaves behind a protege, we are left with a window into the past that can guide us into the future. Nuno Oliveira was an undisputed master of horsemanship. Choosing not to compete, he practiced his art for himself and his horses.